Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 277. Today's episode, I am talking about energetic vampires. You know, those energies that you have that other people feed off of, and you don't even realize that you have that energy. And basically, what's happening is you're like, why aren't people listening to me? Why am I having such a hard time getting a job? Why am I having such a hard time working for a boss that actually knows what he's doing? And these are the energies that you're putting out there, and you're creating a reciprocal effect. Now, I'm not saying that we're the cause of bad or toxic behavior at work, but there are some subtle things that you're putting out into the world that are creating a reaction. So in today's episode, I'm talking about influencing behavior to actually get the outcome that we really, really want at work. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out, because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. Each one of my podcast episodes is always inspired by something that happened in my life in the last week or couple of months, whether that is with my family, with my own thoughts and brain, or with my clients. And today's episode is brought to you by the power of my son. He inspired me this past week through one of his temper tantrums, and it had me thinking about how I want to address a specific topic that a lot of my clients face, and I'm sure you feel this way too, where you want somebody to do something or react a certain way, and you're not able to make that happen. We could call that influence. We want to influence other people. And for some reason, despite all our best efforts, we are not able to influence them to do anything. And in fact, they do the opposite of what it is that we actually wanted them to do. So I have some ways that I work with clients on these different styles of influence. And in today's podcast episode, I am talking to you about some ways that you can shift your energy in key moments. And these are really practical, actual things that you can begin to do this week to shift your energy and to predict how you're going to be able to influence maybe some of those problematic situations, either at work or let's say you're in a job search and you want to influence hiring managers. There are really practical ways that you can begin to influence them right away. So let's start with the story of my son. So this past week was spring break here in California. It was a late spring break this year, and I decided to take the week and spend the week with them. And so I had a couple of appointments, but for the most part, I blocked my calendar off, and we did some fun activities like, staycation type stuff, like go on hikes. Actually, by the way, we just went on a hike at Skywalker Ranch, which I've been to several times, but this is above George Lucas's home in Northern California. And it's, especially if you go in April, it's unbelievable. It's a really hot location in the middle of the summer. But if you go in April, it's kind of overcast and beautiful, and you get to see his entire ranch from up above. It's really absolutely incredible. If you've been there before and you know where I'm talking about, off Lucas Valley Road in San Rafael, shoot me a message, because I just think that's so cool to make my world a little bit smaller. If you haven't been there before, it is a beautiful place to go, especially if you live in Northern California. Why not? Anyway, so that was one of the activities that we did. But on Thursday, I decided to book a couple of calls, and I had a really wonderful plan. So you remember back in 2020, and I know many of you are still working from home, and let's say your children are sick that day and they're also home, and you decide that you're going to work anyway, and I remember juggling this quite a lot back when my kids were home more often and I was trying to work. And so I thought, I know how to do this. I know how to work and have a couple of calls. And now my kids are so much older. So I have an 8 and a 10-year-old, and they're so much older than they used to be. So, meaning that they have ways to entertain themselves and also ways and understanding to not disrupt mommy. So all of that seems very manageable. It was only 90 minutes that I was going to be on calls in my office, and I thought this would be really great. So about 30 minutes before that happened, I started trying to rally everybody up, and I was basically doing everything except talk to them about the fact that I had these calls and that I was going to be working. In other words, what I was doing was being very indirect. I'm like, all right, come on, guys, we need to eat. We need to figure out what you guys are going to do for the next couple of hours. I didn't even tell them why. I was just like, are you going to play video games? Are you going to watch something? Like, what are we going to do for the next couple of hours? And my energy was rising and rising, rising. Well, my son, he just sucks that energy right up. And he must have felt it and reacted to it. And he was a mess. He was yelling at me. He went up to his room. He was so frantic. He was just like all over the place. And I was getting more and more upset. I'm like, come on, guys, what are you doing? And my daughter's not doing anything. She's like, okay, I'm fine. But anyway, so I was getting more and more frantic. So let's just fast forward to after the calls. And my son is brilliant. And he actually came up to me and he said, Mommy, I'm sorry. I was upset because you were yelling at me. And I was like, "What?" And then I kind of thought about it, and he's like, "Yeah, you right before lunch, you started raising your voice." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "No." And I thought back on it, and even as I'm telling you this story, I can tell that my energy was very, very elevated. So I'm thinking about, I got to get on these calls, and these kids have to be calmed down. But the way that I'm going about it is by acting more frantic. Like I'm hurrying up. I'm trying to get the situation. So my children repelled that. Now, the point I'm getting at is that everybody, even if we don't raise our voice, everybody can tell what our actual motivations are at any given time. And I think that for us to think otherwise is really ignorant. And I mean this with love. So a lot of you will say to me, but I didn't actually say that out loud, like whatever that really awful or negative thing, like the person on my team is an idiot. I didn't actually say that out loud. I'm like, well, you thought that, right? And they can tell that. They can feel that. And so what I was thinking was, I need to hurry up and I need to get these guys calmed down, like as if they're not going to listen to me. So instead of just having a conversation with them, being like, okay, I have to be on these calls for 90 minutes. And what can we do to help mommy out? I didn't do any of that. I just started probably yelling at them, as my son said. I don't know. So today's episode, I want to talk about these three energies that I see really common that are rooted in these thoughts that we have in our heads that are saying, I want something from this other person. So I want to influence their behavior. And then I have a certain thought, and then I act a certain way as a result of that thought. And there are three that come up all the time. And so I want to talk to you about these three so that you can start to notice if this is how you're behaving. And then I also want you to ask yourself, if I want somebody to do something, so there's definitely something at work this week or in your life that you want to have happen. We're always wanting to influence other people's behaviors. And I want to give you some tools so that you can begin to regulate and begin to actually influence their behavior. So the first way to influence behavior is to notice your behavior and to actually do something different about it. So in the moment with my son, I didn't notice my behavior until afterwards he pointed it out. And sometimes for you, it's like in that pause afterwards, maybe you have a coach, maybe you're working with me, maybe you're inside my Women's Leadership Accelerator membership program, and you're able to kind of take that breather and to say, why was it that this didn't work out? What was it that happened in that moment. And so that type of reflection is really, really huge. And then we can begin to modulate that going forward. So that's what I want you to do today. So the three types of thoughts, the big energies that I see come up a lot is I'm trying to fix you. I know more than you, and I want you to like me. So either you're thinking, I'm trying to fix you, I know more than you, or I want you to like me. So let's start with I'm trying to fix you. So this happens all the time with direct reports. I'm trying to fix you. So you don't know what you're doing. You're not delivering on time. I shouldn't be having to do all your work for you. You should know better. I just promoted you. Why aren't you actually doing your job? And why aren't you listening to me? And so, what is rooted in that is this concept, this idea of I'm trying to fix you. So, let's say you're really frustrated at a direct report and they're not listening to you. So, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to do all the work for them and think next time I'm going to reprimand them and show them ahead of time, and I'm going to make sure that they know how to do this or that they do their job better, that they actually deliver. So next time, but for now, I just need to meet this deadline. And, that makes a lot of sense. Like you're the one in charge, you're their boss. So you are the one responsible. Or you're going to sort of passive aggressively let them know along the way that they're not meeting their deadline. And this also happens a lot. So this usually happens right before the deadline where you shoot an email and you're like, hey, where are those reports? Remember, you promised me to get those reports to me and I still haven't seen them. So that can seem like not passive aggressive, like very direct. So a lot of clients will be like, I told them, I gave them the deadline. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You shot them an email or even you told them in person, like, hey, what's going on with that? But a lot of times it's so too little too late. You weren't actually helping them across the finish line and you weren't being clear. And so people tend to do this in this effort to not micromanage. So both sides, like I'll just do it for them. Or, on the other side, which is like, I'm just going to let them fail. And then in the end, I'm going to be like, hey, what's going on? And a lot of times what's going on in our brain, the energy that we're putting out and the thing that they're repelling against is they're not doing a good job. And you could say, well, they're not doing a good job. Same with me, right? My son's not listening to me. Of course I should yell at him or whatever, or get mad at him or get frustrated. Why isn't he listening to me? But there's a lot that led up to that from your energy, which is that you probably assumed they weren't going to get it done. There were other thoughts that were lying in your brain that made them seem like the idiot, and you were the person who knew more. Now, let me fast forward to my solution, which is that we micromanage on the expectations. So I have another podcast episode that I will link to in the show notes that talks about micromanaging in the right places. And so a lot of times we're giving our team too much leadway and then they fail and then we're very annoyed at them. And then on the other side, we have to clean up the pieces. Instead, I want you to really assume that they're going to do a great job. So you're not trying to fix them, but you are going to set your expectations up front and you're willing to actually hold their hand and walk them across the finish line. This is not exactly micromanaging. It's only micromanaging if you have that underrooted energy of I'm trying to fix you. You don't know what you're doing. Instead, it's saying you're a fully capable adult, but I have these expectations. I have other things that I'm working on, and I'm going to walk you across and make sure that you know all of the pieces that you need to put into place along the way. This is really hard for people to do, but it's definitely the answer. And when you start to do that, then you're actually able to influence their behavior. They hit their milestones, or you know about it much earlier on, and you're able to course correct earlier on and actually fix the situation. So that's a really great tool if you're trying to fix people, if you're frustrated with them, if you really want to get them to influence them to do a better job at their job, is to begin to set expectations in a stronger way up front, actually walk them through. That's not trying to fix them, that's being a leader. All right. Okay. So the second one is I know more than you. This happens a lot managing up or your peers. And it gets really, really frustrating at work, as it should, when people around you who are in positions of influence and power are acting like idiots. I'm just going to keep using that word. So they're above you. They might be your boss, your boss's boss, or even the CEO of the organization, but they can't do basic things. Like I have clients that are experts in their field and, let's say something like sales. So they know that if they really outline a proposal or have a specific strategy, it will create a specific result, whether it's in sales or success of the product or whatever that might be. But yet your boss doesn't seem to realize that. And so he sort of takes it off in a different direction. Or maybe he's too far into the weeds, so he's micromanaging on specific aspects of your project and he's not listening to you. And here you are in a position where you can actually zoom out and you definitely know more than them. And a lot of times, my clients do know more than their bosses or their bosses' bosses or even their CEOs. They do have a broader perspective. But the problem is that if you go into any situation where you're trying to influence someone and you feel like, and you have the thought, even if you don't say it out loud, that you know more than them, that they're going to pick up on that energy. People don't like it when you act like you know more than them. And maybe you do know more than them. This happens with my kids too, where they're like, but I am right, right? But the goal is to influence their behavior. So if you have a boss or a boss's boss or a CEO and you're trying to get them to be on board with your project, acting like you know more than them is not necessarily going to get them to influence their behavior. So what do we do? And I really want to point this out because many of you are like, well, I don't actually say that out loud. I don't actually act like I know more than them. If you have this thought in your head, you are acting like you know more than them. So one thing is that in a situation where they're going off on the rails and they're talking about something in the weeds, you get so frustrated that you actually try and implement what they're talking about. So this is an example of being frustrated and because you're acting like you know more than them. Okay, fine. I'll do what they say. I'll put that in my report and then we'll see and they'll fail. So this happens. Oh my God. I had another client where an entire system was implemented a whole year later. And she was like, see, I told you so. So her reaction, whatever she did at the time to back down, was not influencing their behavior. It was giving up. And it was rooted in this idea of like, I know more than them, but they're not listening to me. And so her actions that she took at the time were wrong. Now, there's the other extreme, which is that you actually fight back and you're constantly arguing with them and, and you're like, can't you listen? Like, look at this. Don't you see this is right? And neither one of those ways work, but they're both rooted in I know more than you in that sort of sarcastic, frustrated way. So let's say you actually do have a really great idea and you do. Like, I want to say I know more than you, but more in that sense of like, I know how this could work, whether you have practical experience in the past or you can see the pieces better than they can. You're the subject matter expert and you actually do know how to solve this problem, whatever it might be, better than them. So your goal is to get this problem solved. My solution and the way that we work with that energy, instead of being frustrated and being like, God, can't they just do their job? Shouldn't they know this? They're the CEO. They're in the C-suite. Why don't I have a seat at the table? Why aren't they listening to me? Again, which results in either you backing down and just doing whatever the heck they say, or the worst, which is that you start arguing with them and you're just very frustrated and you can't even do your job. What I want you to do instead is to understand that your idea is actually really great. I'm pausing on purpose. Your idea is so valuable and needs to be heard. When I say that, I want you to feel that little tinge of imposter syndrome right there, which is, oh my God, they may actually do this. If they do this and it fails, that would suck. But just that little tiny bit, which is that certainty, get certain. Know that your idea is worth it. And then now what you're going to do is you're going to actually influence their behavior. There's so many ways that we can do this, but you have to come from that grounded place of certainty to say, my idea actually is better than yours. And so now what I'm going to do is maybe I'm going to get curious and I'm going to ask some people on the C-suite what they've tried before. Have they tried something like this? Instead of just telling them, I want to figure out a way to actually influence the people at the organization to do what it is that I'm saying. And it has to come from that energy that just says, hey, we're all in this together. We have the same objective in mind. Let's figure out a way to get there. Another thing that you might do when you have that grounded confidence is you're going to say, okay, I really like that idea, but for phase one, we're going to focus on this, and then we might be able to implement that later. So you're acknowledging the other person that they do have a decent idea, even if you think it's shit. People like to be heard. People like to be seen. People like to be included. These are all behaviors that end up influencing other people. So you're going to say to them, hey, yeah, tell me more about that idea. And for now, in order to get this actually started, we're going to start with phase one, but then we might be able to consider implementing that later. You can even say this to your CEO. This is pushing back, but in a way that's actually inclusive. Your job, no matter what level you're at, if you're having conversations with your CEO, it's because you bring value to the table and your CEO actually admires and wants your opinion. But you got to calm down. You got to actually speak to them in a way that can truly be heard. So when you do that, then you're really influencing those around you. Now, this last one that I want to end on is very, very important because a lot of you, especially as women, are really, really good at this, which is getting other people to like you. In the Strengths Finder, there are 4 main modalities and quadrants of strengths, and there's the 2 of them are relationship building and influencing. And hands down, most of my clients fall under the category of relationship building. They also fall under execution, but that's a different story. They're not so much influencers because if you are really strong at the influencing categories, then you might have what you want. You might have that recognition, power, and influence that you already deserve. So the reason that people hire me and the reason that people work with me is because they need to up their influence game. So when you're working at this idea of I want people to like me, you're probably actually good at it. I remember one of my performance reviews when I worked at the hedge fund, they actually said, we love having you on our team. So maybe you get told that a lot. We love having you around. You're such an asset. You also get feedback as in other peers or maybe your direct reports. Oh, this happens a lot. Your direct reports give you glowing, glowing, glowing write-ups. They say you're the best boss we've ever had. That doesn't mean that you're good at influencing. If you're the best boss that they ever had, that doesn't mean you're going to get promoted. You have to be able to manage up. You can't just manage down. And being the best boss they've ever had isn't necessarily what gets you promoted. You want to be a good person. You want to be somebody who's responsible. And you also want to be kind and you want to bring people along and you don't want to micromanage them and you don't want to be passive aggressive and all those things. But this idea of constantly wanting to be liked can be an Achilles heel because we as women are very, very good at getting people to like us for the most part, right? And when we rely on that in interviews, say, or in getting promoted, then we're blindsided by the behaviors and the energy that we're putting out there that is not actually getting us what we want. We're not actually influencing other people when we're thinking, I want to be liked. So if you're interviewing and you're getting past the recruiter pretty easily and you feel like you have like the recruiter's like, wow, I'm so glad you're applying for this job. You're amazing. Wow, it's going to be great. I'm going to push you forward. This happens a lot. And then they're so confused why they interview with the hiring manager or even they go on 2 or 3 rounds of interviews and they don't get the job because they're very good at getting those front end people to like them. And like I said, similar to like if all your direct reports love you, all the recruiters love you. They're like, oh my God, you're so amazing. But you still are unemployed. You still don't have a job. This could be the reason is because you're still continuing to focus on getting people to like you, even at the interview stage. Once you get into the interview stage, you have to show them what you would be like to work with.
And so this is when that effort attitude comes into play, which is kind of the opposite of getting people to like you. You're willing to say the hard things. You're willing to push back. You're willing to stay in your own lane. You're willing to ask strong questions. All of this is possible in the interview phase. Now, you're not going to go to the extreme and be aggressive because you're managing your energy. So when we're managing our energy successfully, we feel that level of grounded confidence. We kind of feel that level of effort. I talk about authentic power. Authentic power is this ability to be yourself in that you say what you want to say, but you don't dumb it down. You're very, very powerful, but you're also not a know-it-all. You don't have that strong energy that says, I'm better than you, that says, I know more than you, or let me tell you like it is. You are also willing to connect with them. So when you move beyond getting people to like you can like let down that guard. You can say, I belong. I'm one of you. These are not actual words that come out of your mouth. This is energy. And so I want you in this next week to think about your energy. I want you to start to question if, and this is the way you're going to know you're doing something at work or you're interviewing in a way that you're not getting the result that you want. I want you to ask yourself, what is the underlying thought or belief that I have in that situation? And even if it's something seemingly positive, like I want people to like me, which is different than I know more than you, which could be like a negative thought. And you could think, oh, I want people to like me. That's not a negative emotion. It really, really is, because it ends up creating a toxicity in you where you are basically becoming a doormat where you're getting walked all over. And this can work up until a certain point in your career. But when you want to have real power and influence at your organization, you have to learn how to play the game, how to be one with them, how to energetically match them, how to match them at the energy of I belong. Same thing with the first one, which is, why can't you just do what I'm telling you to do? When you have a direct report who's not listening to you, can they just do their job? You have to match them at their energy and be like, oh, okay, what's going on here? A lot of women really want to be like authentic, humble leaders. They want to be compassionate. They love like the work that they do, and they really value those qualities in themselves. But they're so frustrated and so annoyed and so pissed that that's the energy that they're leading with all the time. Instead, what I want you to do is take that step back to really think, like zoom out and be like, okay, where are those moments where maybe I'm pushing a little bit too hard or I'm trying too hard to get people to like me? And how can I emulate that grounded confidence and really connect with people where they're at? When we do that as leaders, we are superstars. We are the world's greatest boss. We are that person that we really respect. When I have a friend that I truly, truly like, it is the person who says it like it is. It's not the person that just seems to yes every single thing that I say, and they just always seem to be so positive and, oh, it doesn't matter. Those are not my friends. The people who I can have intelligent conversations with, I know that that's in you as well. And I encourage you to find those places where your energy might be getting sucked out. People might be responding to them in sort of these ridiculous ways, like my son did, and really have a down to earth, grounded conversation with someone this week. All right. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions, and decided where you fall in each category, and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be or how far away you might be and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time, so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today.